try to put us down, talking about my generation, just because we get around. Oh, hi. Hey y'all, how y'all doing? Um, so in 1965, The Who released a track that is arguably one of the greatest rock tracks ever recorded. It's called My Generation. I'm sure that anyone watching this video knows exactly what I'm talking about. I have many fond memories of growing up and listening to bands like The Who in my dad's 1988 Mitsubishi Mighty Max, which, mind you, if you don't know what that is, please look it up. It is a beast of a tiny little truck. Anyway, I want to talk about my generation today. I want to talk about what The Who was trying to say, who The Who was talking to, and how that song from the 1960s resonates to my generation and the current generation that's coming of age now. So, first, I think it's probably a good idea to talk about what my generation inherited and what the coming of age story of my generation looks like. So, I am a millennial, born in 1987, and our generation was, we're called millennials because, we were to start coming of age, start going into our teenage years at the turn of the millennium, which, that's when we were going to start becoming the people that we are today. That coming of age was already kind of defined by government corruption, by environmental catastrophe, by global political just tomfoolery. And, some examples of that, of course, are, like Bosnia and Kosovo, which happened in the 90s, as well as the botched campaign in Somalia. You have the felling of the Amazon and the stripping away of the ozone layer, which was a really big deal when we were in school. And then a sort of shift in politics following the end of the Cold War, which my generation kind of witnessed as small children, and then were treated to this sort of post-Cold War victory rhetoric in school and in our upbringing. So you have all of that. And then 9/11 happened. I was in, ninth grade, and suddenly now you're forced to reckon with the fact that there are many cultures, peoples, and ideologies who genuinely hate this country. And then that's supplemented with the realization that there's some pretty good reasons as to why. And that's, as somebody who is brought up with the idea that your country is sort of the moral authority of the world, that's a tough pill to swallow. Afterwards, of course, you have the passing of the Patriot Act, which is celebrated by our parents' and grandparents' generations. Um, you have the subsequent military campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as Syria and in other areas, um, sort of following the declaration of the Global War on Terror, as well as OIF and OEF. And the, decades long military campaigns that, in hindsight, proved themselves to be unwinnable. You have the unsustainable economic programs which led to bailouts of major corporations that then used those bailouts to further their self-gratification, resulting in an economy that was left in deeper shambles than it had been in before. And then we became adults. Then we were told to fix the world's problems. You have an economy that was worse than in the 1960s. You have two Vietnam situations. You have cultural, social, and racial tensions that are not much better than in the 1960s. And we were the generation that, as children, watched the LA riots, and the cause of the LA riots, which were the Rodney King beatings. And so many other things that our generation inherited as we came of age. And yet, we were called whiners. We were called participation trophy seekers. We were lambasted for our low work ethic. We were derided for having everything at our fingertips, much like the generation, or the generational group of the Who. And this is by we were called all these things by a generation that easily had it the easiest that any generation before them had. They inherited a new order in which their culture was, well, dominant and supreme in the world. They inherited an economy that really favored them. They inherited a social order that the people doing the lambasting really were on top. College wasn't really an issue because, well, you could pay for it working at a diner. And all of these things were taken for granted. They were handed participation trophies and then lauded themselves as, you know, earning it. When really it was the hard work of their parents' generation that bought them, that earned them these privileges. And I say all this because I think about the generation that's coming up right now. The generation that's coming of age right now. The generation that is graduating from high school and having to go off into the world and damn, all of the problems that we inherited, all of them. Theirs are exacerbated tenfold, and they have 10 times the problems. The environmental crisis is worse than we could have ever imagined. The global politics are just a mess. The problems at home aren't that much better. Racial tensions, just watch the news. This is a generation that was treated to a mythology that America was the country that defeated fascism, and then watched as their parents and their grandparents enthusiastically and overwhelmingly invited fascists to the highest echelons of American government. This current generation, I truly feel for, and I completely support in all of their critiques of the generations before them, to include mine. I think that if we are going to go forward with fixing the problems of the world, we might do well to listen to the Thunbergs and the Hogs of the world, because these are members of a generation that literally have a target on their backs every day. This is a generation that literally lives on a dying planet. And we have kicked the can down the road for far too long. I think it's time that we listen to them. All of us. Because when you are forced to grow up at the age that they were forced to grow up, it could be argued that they might be the most mature generation to exist in, well, generations. I guess my point is that the Who was right. Like many, many other instances where artists deem themselves prophetic, the Who was right. The current generation is the generation that can save the world. But we got to stop putting them down. And we gotta listen to them because they've already proven themselves to be the leaders. And frankly, I'm tired of handing leadership over to a bunch of entitled whiners who are always looking for a participation trophy. Because that's literally what gave us the last 4 years. Anyway, I'm going to go listen to The Who. Y'all have a great day.